Hi, my name is Shawn Shaler. That's my friend Chris Ford, aka the Objective Geek of YouTube and Twitter. And today is garbage, and that's why we're here, because today sucks. And that's why we had to have this emergency podcast to share some garbage, horrible news with you. And I'm going to sit here and fume while Chris takes you through some of the details.
So long story short, Mike and Bryan, the co-creators of Avatar: The Last Airbender and The Legend of Korra, will no longer be involved in the Netflix live-action adaptation, which they were pretty much the linchpin, I think, to a lot of people's excitement over it. But before I get too in deep into it, we'll go over a lot of different things. We'll go over the statements from Mike and Bryan. We'll go over how we feel about it, what it can mean for the future, and speculate on why it could have happened. And so it shouldn't take that long. But let's start
It happened
by going
because
over
2020 hates us. That's why.
20. I can't be too bad at 2020 because I had a son in 2020, got a new job. Anyway, but 2020 is the worst.
It's still the worst year of all time. But anyways.
Okay. So let's go ahead and read Bryan Konietzko's statement. The thing is, I skipped to paragraph 2 because I was like, this is somber. He starts off with, I know I'm laughing, but I was seriously so distraught. Anyway.
We're laughing because we don't know how else to react, man. Don't know how else.
Bryan Konietzko's statement. Before I get into the crux of the statement, I would like to make it clear that I am very aware and appreciative of the fact that I am in an exceedingly fortunate position and that the following issues are indeed good problems to have. Even more so now that we are in the grips of a global pandemic and a cratering economy which has left millions unemployed. With that crucial context, here's the big news from my little world. First of all, let me interject here. I like that they understand that, like, hey, this is not big world problems. They've always seemed pretty aware of, I guess, their place in the universe.
They're not like hashtag first world problem people.
Yeah. He goes on to say, Michael DiMartino and I recently chose to leave Netflix's live-action adaptation of Avatar: The Last Airbender, the series he and I created together in 2002. We will have no involvement in the project moving forward. Gosh, that's so sad. Just that statement alone.
It's really hard to read.
This is probably the most difficult decision I have ever made, but there's no doubt in my mind it is absolutely the right choice. When Netflix brought me on board to run the series alongside Mike 2 years ago, they made a very public promise to support our vision. Let me interject there. To me, that's Mike saying, like, hey, they reneged on their promise, and it was a very public promise.
I was gonna say, that's pretty direct accountability wording there.
Yeah, Mike's not Bryan and Mike's not playing around. I mean, they're being fairly polite, but they're being very upfront, which I appreciate. He goes on to say, unfortunately, there was no follow-through on that promise. Though I got to work with some great individuals, both on Netflix's side and on our own small development team, the general handling of the project created what I felt was a negative and unsupportive environment. That's damning right there.
It's not Washington Redskins bad, but it sounds rough.
He goes on to say, to be clear, this is not a simple matter of us not getting our way. Mike and I are collaborative people. We did not need all the ideas to come from us. As long as we felt those ideas were in line with the spirit and integrity of Avatar, we would have happily embraced them. However, we ultimately came to the belief that we would not be able to meaningfully guide the direction of the series. Though I am profoundly disappointed by how things turned out, there are wonderfully talented people who are still working on the series, some of whom Mike and I personally hired and got to know well during our time on the project. So that's him kind of being like, hey, just support it. I'm not in it, but there's people I like that's in it. He goes on to say, we worked very hard together towards a shared dream of how special this adaptation could be. I want to see them employed, and I hope they get the chance to do their best work on the series. Perhaps the team that remains might still be able to make something fans of the original, entirely new audience can enjoy. That statement kills me because, and also Mike also has another statement that just kind of sets the bar so low. Perhaps.
Maybe somebody
Maybe.
will accidentally
The
click on
team.
this when they're scrolling through Netflix and then remember,
Yeah.
wait, Bryan and Mike not there.
Yeah. Then he ends by saying, by and large, I have an incredibly charmed career and am very grateful for it. And I am enormously lucky for the amazing global community of fans that has grown around the shows Mike and I have created and run together. I will continue to be deeply involved in the Avatar universe, telling the stories my partner and I want to tell in the way we want to tell them. I'll put my time, energy, and talents towards the project that give me the most fulfillment and where I am afforded trust and respect. Life is too short to do otherwise. Bryan Konietzko.
I feel like I can't
Yes.
even look you in the eyes on screen right now. Like, we're not in person, but I feel like you're like delivering some real bad news and you just can't meet somebody's face when you're hearing it. And it's not even you, it's
Yeah.
just a TV screen.
Oh, man. Okay. Now, on to Michael DiMartino's statement.
So I actually haven't read this one yet, so I'm gonna do my best to like shut up and hear the whole thing all at once.
Okay. He says, okay, come on, Facebook. Why did you do this to me right now? I just had you up. Why refresh? when
Oh, you needed this?
Mike says, okay, come on. Sorry. And here what the heck was that? Oh, okay, notifications. Bryan says, Michael Dante DiMartino says, an open letter to Avatar: The Last Airbender fans. Many of you have been asking for updates about the live-action Netflix series. These aren't the updates we wanted, Mike. Mike, these aren't the updates we wanted.
I mean, a simple "it's going fine" would have been okay.
Yeah. I can finally tell you that I am no longer involved with the project. In June of this year, after 2 years of development work, Bryan Konietzko and I made the difficult decision to leave the production. Okay, this is interesting because I just watched, whenever they did like the Avatar: Last Airbender, the whole Avatar, they had like a Comic-Con at Home panel. Like they had FCE, who wrote Rise of Kyoshi and Shadow of Kyoshi, Jean Luen Yang, who's written plenty of the comics, and Faith Erin Hicks, who's written plenty of the comics, and Michael Dante DiMartino. And like afterwards, they were talking about like the love of the series and everything. It's how it's evolved and stuff. Afterwards, the person narrating or hosting it was like, "Oh, hey, everyone, tell me what you're doing now, so people can stay involved." And I noticed that Michael Dante DiMartino wasn't like, "Oh, well, I'm currently working on the Netflix adaptation." He didn't say that. He just says, "I'm working in the Avatar universe and doing other things." And I had a hint in the back of my head, just like, I mean, yeah, I can say that now. Just that, hey, I wonder, like, what's going on with that? I still held out hope, or I was naive, I guess, that they're like, oh, well, why wouldn't he mention the Netflix show? Anyway, and that happened in July, that Comic-Con at Home. But anyway, he goes on to say, when Bryan and I signed on to this project in 2018, we were hired as executive producers and showrunners. In a joint announcement for the series, Netflix said that it was committed to honoring our vision for this retelling and to supporting us on creating the series. Again, they're holding Netflix accountable for this. Like, they're not being indirect with it. And we expressed how excited we were for the opportunity to be at the helm. Unfortunately, things did not go as we had hoped. Look, things happen. Productions are challenging. Unforeseen events arise. Plans have to change. And when those things have happened at other points during my career, I try to be like an air nomad and adapt. Do my best to go with the flow, no matter what obstacles is put in my way. But even an air nomad knows when it's time to cut their losses and move on. I feel like they're gonna like now have some whatever new story they have, they'll have some air nomad with some philosophy being like, the wind may adapt, but every now and then you come against a stubborn mountain, and the wind cannot push a mountain.
So I just keep thinking of that song, "The Gambler." There's no one to hold him.
Yeah. Anyway, I started to reevaluate what is truly important in my life and what I wanted to do with what's left of it. I took some advice from Uncle Iroh. I looked inward and started asking myself the big questions. Who are you and what do you want? Those are big questions. I
Well,
also
it's
saw
pretty meta
wisdom from
asking questions. There's a chance you had a hand in writing. That's
yeah, like you wrote the character.
it's like the other day when I accidentally liked
Okay.
my own Facebook status. That's how I felt.
Yeah. Or it's like me when I'm like Googling research for like Avatar and I come across my own video. I'm like, I am the source.
I'm credible.
Yeah. Okay. He continues. I also sought wisdom from Stoic philosophers who were big on differentiating between what is within our control and what isn't. I realized I couldn't control the creative direction of the series, but I could control how I responded. So I chose to lead the project. It was the hardest professional decision I've ever had to make. Certainly not one that I took lightly, but it was necessary for my happiness and creative integrity. And who knows? And who knows? Netflix live action adaptation of Avatar has the potential to be good. Again, they're setting the bar low. God, and that's so sad. That's okay.
It
He goes on to say, it might turn out to be a show many of you end up enjoying. But what I can be certain about is that whatever version ends up on screen, it will not be what Bryan and I had envisioned or intended to make. Yeah, that's again just damning things they're saying about Netflix. It's
You know,
I
maybe
also
if the Shyamalan movie had never happened and some people didn't have this like PTSD for something similar in the past, but I
I
mean,
know that's yeah.
if that wasn't there, maybe everybody would still have some optimism, like, oh, it could still be, you know, what it's different. But we're like, no, we don't want
Yeah,
different.
I was yeah, I think that's I was gonna bring that up later, but I think that has a lot to do with a lot of people's reaction to it. He goes on to say, I also want to be clear that this doesn't mean the end of my involvement in the Avatar universe. These stories and characters are important to me in the renewed interest and excitement in Avatar Encore has been inspiring to see. Writing this letter has left me with a very heavy heart. I know many of you will be disappointed and frustrated by this news. I get it. I share your disappointment and frustration. I also recognize this creative setback is small compared to the problems we're all facing as a society right now. Thankfully, Iro offered some wisdom for that too. Sometimes life is like this dark tunnel. You can't always see the light at the end of the tunnel, but if you just keep moving, you'll come to a better place. May we all keep moving and come to a better place. Thanks for reading and your continued enthusiasm for the Avatar universe. With gratitude, Michael Dante DiMartino. Man, okay, let's hurry up and I'll just read Netflix's crap, whatever statement they put out.
Their dog ate my homework. Bullshit.
Yeah, it's just like a vague corporate statement, you know, the typical.
Because if they come out and like bash Michael and Bryan, like nobody's gonna watch it.
Yeah. Okay. They said some spokesperson. No, okay. Some spokesperson from Netflix said, we have complete respect and admiration for Michael and Bryan and the story that they created in the Avatar animated series. Although they have chosen to depart the live action project, we are confident in the creative team and their adaptation. That was their statement.
That was it?
Okay. Michael and Bryan writes this like long diary passage of just like my heart's ripped out and stuff.
Makes me think of when we were at Payless and one of our friends had to like read a statement off to the news, and it was just like, we are unfortunately experiencing layoffs at this time and we're very sorry and we cannot provide any more details at this time. Thank you. And that's what they had to say, or something akin to that.
Yeah.
It hurts. Whatever. Let's break it down.
Okay. So, first of all, Shawn, how do you feel?
I feel like what horrible timing, because the shows like Korra coming, Avatar: The Last Airbender was the #1 show for how many weeks on Netflix? Like, there's clearly
like 4. It broke a record. It broke a record for a number of days in the top 10. for any show. Granted, they've just started keeping that record probably this year, but still, that's compared to things like Stranger Things, Ozark, like heavy hitters for Netflix.
Like brand new properties for Netflix's exact target audience, and it is beating those. And so you and I have never once said that we don't want any changes to it. I don't think we have advocated for that. We have been supportive and throwing back and forth ideas about changes. But it still seems like they could have, at a minimum, they could have like not changed anything, and we would have all watched, and it would have been popular and made money and been great, and everybody would have left happy. So I don't know what happened, but it seems like a bad idea. Why? All right, you go.
Yeah. So I'm also struck with this news. It's weirdly. I think I am because I feel for Mike and Bryan, right?
It's
like
their
they have to
baby
watch
that they're giving away again, and
yeah, to watch M. Night Shyamalan, which they went to him, was like, hey, and consoled him, and then he ignored them. And so they had to watch him butcher, just completely massacre their baby, their creation. Then they're given a second chance, and they've been put in charge to do it. And then other people, higher ups, are still in their way of them living out their dream. Like it's frustrating on that point. I do think I am weirdly more mad at Netflix than M. Night Shyamalan. Like M. Night Shyamalan is no longer number one on my crap list of Avatar villains.
I'm not ready to go that far.
I'm
not ready to go that far yet, but I see what you're getting at.
Well, the reason why is because M. Night Shyamalan was hired as a director to do his vision, right? Even though that vision was crap, it was a crap vision. It was terribly done, and he ignored Mike and Bryan. He still did his vision. There's a certain aspect of respecting artistry, right? He was responsible for that. Mike and Bryan was responsible for this. They are the showrunners. Like a showrunner is like a director of a movie. Like they are put in charge of writing, of finding the directors, of casting. They should be in charge of all those things. And for Mike and Bryan to have been kind of lied to, saying, "Hey, you have this power, and now you don't. You've been ripped. That's been ripped from you." That is disheartening. I just have a big hate for Netflix right now.
I believe them. I believe them wholeheartedly when they say that they were told that it would be, in their creative visions. I believe that. I don't know if I recall anything from the time necessarily, but when they say it, and they both said it so directly and clearly, I am inclined to believe them that they were misled.
Yeah. So we're both mad about it. Like, I can't tell you how excited I was when I found out they were doing live action adaptation, that Mike and Bryan was on it, because I'm a fan of Mike and Bryan. I'm a fan of their artistry, and whatever changes, if they want to make other changes and realize their vision that maybe it's a different way or in whatever way, if they want to do completely what they did, I was going to respect them. And no matter what the quality was, like, I wasn't expecting this to be better than the show, because this is the show and nostalgia plays a factor in things, and something being the original and the first.
But
it's
that
always
respect comes from a place of, like, it comes from a place of trust, though, like the same way that I would respect, any decision my wife made ever. Well, part of that is because I trust her so much to not do stupid things that I committed half of my crap to her in marriage. Like,
yeah.
They weren't going to do anything
I just don't,
crazy or bad or dumb or...
Yeah, I think at the most they would have maybe changed a few things, but it would have been their vision, so I would have been fine with whatever they want to do, because they're the true artists. I just don't get, as Netflix, how do you have creative differences with the creators? Like,
what were they so tied up about so frequently that they chased away the two most important people in the project? Like, what ideas does Netflix have in their heads? Like, this is how it's going to be better.
That's a good question. That's a good segue into kind of Arnett's formal section.
I know.
Exactly, like what could have happened
I
to,
know I
to
keep
split.
interrupting you here, and I'm sorry. It
Uh,
just is infuriating to think of like if you came to me with one of your glass your glass mosaic and it's beautiful and great, be like, all right, let's make another one. I'm gonna let you decide how to do it, but also I know how to do it better than you did your idea. Go
yeah.
away.
Um, so a couple things that maybe, and this part is pure speculation, and
Sure.
I'll say if I think things are. I mean, I'll mention things even if I think it's not unlikely. Um, so like one of the things could have been that maybe they changed characters, like sexual orientation, things like that. I don't think Netflix would have any issue with them, and I think that would probably come from Mike and Bryan. 'Cause Mike and Bryan are pretty progressive about stuff. So I mean, some people have mentioned that, and I just don't think Netflix at least have been shown to be open to things. Um, if that's the case, so I kind of have a feeling that's not the case.
I would.
People have brought up like what if it was a different story that they wanted to do. I could see that being an issue, but I think Mike and Bryan were going to do Avatar because they talked about Avatar: Last Airbender and everything, and they talked about bringing this to their vision, how it should be portrayed accurately. So I don't think it's a story issue. Also, they have been working on the story aspect of it for the past 2 years. So I just have a feeling it's not the story wasn't the issue. The
I
thing that
feel I feel stronger about it potentially being the story than characters. Personally, just
okay,
if Netflix is trying to impart too many different ideas that Bryan and Michael did not have in their original Netflix vision, I could see that being a
okay,
huge
so
sort of sticking point. Is it time for a Zutara joke?
I want. Dang it, Shawn. Yeah, Zutara killed this. I'm blaming Zutara right now. They are the ones responsible for killing Mike and Bryan. Okay, so the only reason why I say this is because I could see higher ups in Netflix being like, you have a whole fan base, a whole section of your fan base who really likes this coupling of people. Why don't you just put that into the story? And Mike and Bryan be like, we don't. That was never part of the story. But what if it
But what
was?
if we did
You
it?
could make Zutara happen. And
What if
so
they like
I
walk
mentioned
in
this
on set
because,
someday and Zuko and Katara are just making out and they're like, we gotta talk.
yeah, turns out the actors and actresses were just dating and stuff. If only that was a hypothetical.
Oh, I
But
can't wait to
so
drop the Zutara joke on Jamie. Jamie, if you're listening,
uh,
we're really sorry. Just kidding.
but the Netflix's official Twitter, like a couple weeks ago, was like, "Hey, Zuko and Katara should have ended up together, right?" And then
What?
the
I
thing
thought
is,
you
I
were
wrote under
joking.
it. No, that was a real thing. Their official one that like
The
it's like
Netflix US Twitter whatever.
yeah, it's not the official one, but it's like their second official one that actually like
Okay.
um, reacts with fans and stuff like that. And then they took a poll and everything for Zutara, and it came up like 39.5% Zutara, 39.9% Katang, and then the others were like nothing or some whatever the other option was. And so maybe they want to add a little bit more um, romantic drama in the show that wasn't there before, like a love triangle.
That's
I
a
could
nice
see
way to
them
put it.
doing.
Maybe it wasn't specifically like, hey, we're gonna go this specific direction. It's like, no, it's Netflix. We've got these people as adults now. Let's rope in the romantic drama portion. I like how you worded that.
Yeah.
That's a great point.
One thing I do think something could have had to do with. So they've gotten this far on the story, right? So the next thing, once you have the story laid out, which I feel like they probably did have laid out, and maybe they had some disagreements with it or something, but I could see it coming down to casting. I know a lot of people's first reaction is like, "Oh, Netflix wanted to whitewash it." I hope that's not the case because Mike and Bryan were really upfront in their statements when the Netflix series was announced. They're like, "Oh no, we're going to cast this appropriately," and so I really don't think that's it, because Netflix should know up front that they were going to cast these roles appropriately, especially relative to M. Night Shyamalan's
I don't
crap.
have any data or anything, but I would be surprised to it feels like Netflix is sensitive to that type of thing, or at least would not have repeated that mistake.
Yeah. I don't think they would have repeated that mistake. But uh, a popular rumor nowadays, probably because it's I don't know, gets Twitter clout and stuff like that.
That's fair.
But when it comes to casting, though, I could see there being that Netflix probably wanted to age up the cast and probably wanted to make things a little bit more mature. Because when Bryan says in his statement that they weren't living up to the spirit of the show, I mean, very much the spirit of the show is an all ages show, about kids taking on the Fire Nation, taking on the concept of war and hate and all these philosophical things. Maybe that doesn't hit as well, and Bryan and Mike didn't agree to raise the cast. Again, this is speculation, but I can see Netflix being like, hey, let's raise these ages up. Also, because then they could sexualize them if they wanted to, which then goes to the whole Zutara thing.
Well, that seems plausible to me.
Because also they might there could still be a stigmatism with a kids show with a kids cast that adults might not watch, and being higher up and Netflix might be like, no, we want adults to watch this. So I can see them maybe trying to age up the cast, and Mike and Bryan being like, no, we don't want to age up the cast at all. We want to cast like a freaking 11-year-old harangue.
I think that sounds very reasonable. Not like a good idea, reasonable as something that
Plausible.
could have possibly caused it. And you know what? We're saying all these things. In reality, I'm sure it was, a handful of separate but related things.
Yeah. But yeah, so do you think? Can you think of anything other reasons why this could have happened?
My gut reaction was that the story would have been really important to them in mostly its original state. The thing that I didn't consider that you said I liked a lot, just aging up, combining the aging up, romantic drama, potential sexualization. Again, we're talking about hitting our age of people that watched it initially as young people, and now we're older. Fits with the Netflix motif, potential for better performance. So that's not something I had thought of, but does kind of make a lot of sense on the surface to me as a total uneducated.
Yeah. All right, so Nets, what does this mean for the future? Netflix said they're still going to do the series. And I mean, they probably will do the series. They have the rights to it. I don't think they would let it go away because one thing, besides from diehard Avatar fans like ourselves, from people on Twitter, the general audience doesn't give a crap about who's working behind the scenes for the most part.
I wouldn't have ever thought of that at all in any movie ever before we started having this podcast. Like, that was me, and that's fine. That's fine.
Yeah, no, it's fine. And so, in their eyes, it's like, well, yeah, we're gonna go do this. This is gonna be successful. I mean, Avatar I would say, it's been ranking high. Legend of Korra is gonna be on Friday, and that's probably gonna rank high as well. So they're definitely gonna keep doing it. My hope would be is that, oh no, there's so much backlash that they don't do it, and then they just give up those rights to do the show. And this is weird because I'm now rooting for Viacom, that like and CBS All Access, they're like, that's our property. We should do our own show, and then they'll give Mike and Bryan full creative control to go do it. Again, that's not even speculation. That's not going to happen because Netflix is going to do their Avatar: The Last Airbender show.
I think so too, and I got to be honest, I wouldn't trust whatever amount of budget that CBS and Viacom would dedicate to it because I've seen what Viacom does to video games, and I don't want to see them do that to my favorite television show.
Yeah,
I agree. They're not going to do it. I would say my prediction for. Oh, are you going to bring up predictions shortly? I might be jumping the shark.
I just want to go back real quick. We didn't mention budget. I don't think budget was an issue because Netflix has a big budget.
Yeah. Especially after seeing the performance of the animated show, it would be hard to believe that it was an issue.
and Bryan and Mike, they probably would have mentioned like, oh, we wanted to fulfill our dream of really doing our vision, but the budget wasn't there. We couldn't agree with the budget. They would have said that.
Yeah.
And then also, I just want to say we might be really biased in protecting and defending Mike and Bryan and being on their side in this.
Of course we're biased. We've got a podcast named after the show. That's fine. We can be biased.
Which reminds me, some guy retweeted my tweet of like, how pathetic is it that someone has a podcast dedicated to a show that came out in 2008? And I didn't even respond to it. I kind of wanted to, but I was like, no, he said a cartoon, a kid's show. I was like, who the heck are you? Like,
did you call up the other 8 podcast friends we have that also have Avatar shows?
Yes.
And those are just the ones that are successful enough to be seen more visibly than ours.
Yeah. Okay, so all right, we'll go on to what this means for the future. Shawn, if you want to say anything.
I just wanted to offer a real quick prediction on the Netflix bit, was that I think they will go through with it, and it'll be one of those things where it'll still top the chart for like half a week or so, like just initial excitement. Because, you know, we'll binge it, right? And then it'll kind of fall off the face of the earth. It'll probably be okay, and it'll fall off the face of the earth, and it'll be just forgotten over time and sit in that little repository, and it'll just be like it'll be like the mediocre, like the role player draft pick from the first round kind of disappointment, you know, not a total bust, but just not do what it should have done. So,
also, I want to say I hope that Jeremy Zuckerman still does some music for it. Man, he's such good friends with Mike, with Bryan, Konietzko. Like, they were roommates in college.
Oh, I didn't know that. Or if I did, I forgot.
Like, they go way back. Like, way back. If Bryan's not a part of it, I wouldn't doubt it if Jeremy Zuckerman decided to drop Rima 2. And that would be, for some reason, that would hit harder than not hearing the music. It all hits hard, but if I had to guess, Jeremy Zuckerman's going to drop out too.
I wouldn't predict that personally. I'd be on the fence at least, just because I imagine like composition and pay structure and like his ability to leave financially could be very different. Not that he doesn't have money, that's not what I'm saying. But just sort of the scope of work and the schedule and everything. It would be really hard for Netflix to allow a composer to leave mid development, I guess. So I don't know anything about it. I would just not be surprised if that was different in a way that kind of financially engaged him to staying.
Yeah. I wonder would they just like, if Jeremy didn't work on it, would they just hire somebody to just reuse his material from the show, which is good enough.
Sure.
But you know Jeremy Zuckerman was gonna like make some tweaks, add probably more orchestra to it, just really hype it up.
He was certainly going to have, I would say, more financial capacity to do that.
Yeah. Yes.
Probably more time too, even than he would have.
Oh gosh. Yeah, it's so interesting. I was just listening to. Sorry, we're going a little tangent. I was listening to him. He was talking about how he did the score for the Azula versus Zuko fight. And he was just racking his brain. He couldn't think of anything at all for it. And like he went to Mike, or he went to Bryan, was like, I can't think of anything. And Bryan was like, just make it simple. And then he was like, all right. And then it turned into like one of the most beautiful pieces of music that so many people remember.
I believe that constraint inspires creativity. So when he gets that, he's got writer's block, and he gets that note from Bryan, and it's like, keep it simple. It's like, all right, there's my constraint. Simple but beautiful avatars. That's all he needed.
All right, real quick, a prediction that I'm going to have is that it's an off prediction, honestly. So they're going to do the show no matter what. It's probably going to be fairly successful, but I don't think they have the rights to Legend of Korra. And so I could see CBS being, if they had money in the budget at that point, being like, hey, now that they've told that story, we can give Mike and Bryan full, complete freedom. Maybe they'll do Legend of Korra, which would then be funny if Legend of Korra live action series was like just unabashedly, just everybody just loved that way more than the live action Avatar: Last Airbender.
That would be so just a polarizing. It would blow people's brains.
Yeah.
I don't trust Viacom or CBS enough to like pick it up and do a good job. Again, it's one of those I would still watch it and I'd still be excited and supportive.
I've heard
I
they've
just
done good with Ducard Star Trek series. I don't watch it, but
I'm not familiar with that, but I would take somebody else's word for it. But if that were the
yeah.
case, it wouldn't hurt my feelings just because I do want to continue seeing. I just don't want to see the universe die, but in the creation, I
Oh, and
want to
that's
come from Michael and Bryan
yeah.
specifically. So Chris, you were saying before your phone died and it made it look like the room turned on its side. If we had just finished discussing potentially the Korra series, and thanks for jumping back in.
Yes, I was just gonna say, I think one of the biggest takeaways is that Mike and Brian are still very adamant about creating more in the Avatar universe. They'll going to create even more stories, and so I mean, the last I don't know if it'll be animated because when they were done with Legend of Korra, they seemed like they were done with animation. Like it was just so much hard work. But it means it's been a while. It's been like 5 years since Legend of Korra, so maybe they'll go back to it. Or maybe they'll focus more on comics. Although Brian has way more experience with animation than like storytelling. Usually Michael handles the storytelling aspect of it, and Brian handles the art and the art direction, things like that. So hopefully this means we'll get more cartoons maybe now that they're kind of free from that. Hopefully, we'll get maybe an adaptation of Kyoshi novels. I would love that.
I want something. Yeah, getting the Kyoshi novels on my screen would be tremendous. The comics are fine. Like I'm enjoying reading them, but it is a different mindset for me going to these comics. And then they also, in my opinion, they don't sort of clearly represent Michael and Brian's voices nearly as well. Like they're not. It's clear that their involvement there is different. I always think when I'm reading them. So still fun. I don't want to bash it, but yeah, put more Avatar on my TV screen somehow, please.
Yes.
But Michael and Brian Avatar, not Shyamalan or Netflix Avatar.
Yeah, I'm actually curious who's going to come on to be the showrunner. Some people said someone said, "Hey, Aaron Ehasz, come on, step up," and while that would be cool and all, I don't think Aaron Ehasz. One thing they just greenlit the Dragon Prince for the whole entire 7 seasons, the
Great.
whole saga, which is great.
Yeah.
And
Excellent.
also, to me, he probably takes way more ownership of that show than he does Avatar. Like Avatar isn't his baby, and I feel like sometimes I mean, it's just not his baby, so he might just want to stick to his baby. Though he loves those characters, I'm not sure he wants to dive back into the world. Also, I don't think he has um, as much experience with like a lot of the more Asian philosophies and things. I don't think that was his strong suit with it when it comes to Avatar. We'll be curious if maybe they bring in, some an Asian showrunner to do it. That might get Netflix on some people's good side, which would be great because I mean Mike and Brian, they're they even though they had huge help in their art department and their consultations, things like that, from Asian people and Eastern Asian people, and they really revolutionized the way they work with the animation team overseas in South Korea, that other cartoons weren't doing at the time, but some of them still don't do. Like they have such a good working relationships with them. But I guess right now, I would recommend Netflix. Yeah, go ahead and get an Asian person who's really into Avatar, who's a really great showrunner. I don't have any in mind right now, but I know
I don't know
the
how
talent
long that
pool is
list is, but
huge.
I'd be interested. Yeah.
I mean, Netflix might not know a lot of people, but there's people out there. So maybe that can be what they can do to get back in some good people's graces. Other than that, I'm still be pissed off about it. Like I'm just not as excited about it anymore. Like I was looking so much forward to it, and now it's just gonna feel like fanfic, honestly.
It's just it may not be as bad as Shyamalan's, but it does feel as dirty.
Yeah, but I do think you're right that we're that we've been burned once, and this twice burned hurts more.
It And I would say if it hadn't happened before, we would still react, maybe 80% to this level or whatever, but we wouldn't have that previous basis of like, look what happens when it, goes away. And so maybe there would have just been a little more optimism of, no, it's fine, give it a chance, it's Netflix. So yeah, maybe if that wasn't lingering in our hearts for a decade and a half, it'd be a little different.
Yep. But that's all I got, Shawn. I know, you got things to do. No need to weigh you down even more. But thank you for anyone who are finding us, who are watching us. Go just I don't know, keep going down this tunnel. Might get to a better place.
And to all those people who retweeted our F-bomb tweets earlier, thanks for made us feel better. When you commiserate in company, it makes you feel better about it. Thanks, Chris. Thanks, everybody else, for recording this little emergency podcast. It has not been fun, but I'm glad we were able to put something together quick. We will talk to you very soon about Korra, untainted, not Netflix, Legend of Korra. That's right around the corner, so come visit us again on Friday. We'll talk to you guys later.